Hey everybody, welcome to story number 5. Talk a little bit more about our time in Russia. When I first landed there and spent my time there before we moved there, I got pretty close to my translator. His name was Yuri, and Yuri was a really interesting character. He was a lawyer, and he was kind of a tall, lanky guy, skinny, a little clumsy, funny, real strange sense of humor, but real enjoyable to be around. And he knew everybody. His mother was a famous opera singer, and his father was the Abbott and Costello of Russia, a comedian on television. And so he told stories about sitting on the lap of Duke Ellington and hanging out with lots of movie stars. And English was perfect. And when I first landed, he talked to me a bit about, well, if you're going to do a business here, you have to understand that the law requires that you have a Russian partner. It was something they put into place there, that you needed to have a partner that was Russian. He only had to have 1% or something. He didn't have to have a lot. He just had to be a percentage of partner in your business. And so Yuri said, if the point ever comes, the time ever comes, you can just use your lawyer, me, if I set up your company. You can use me to be your 1%. So when I got back and started getting serious with business in the embassy and doing lots of things, I went into him and I said, time to set up a company and a business. And so we did. And I put him in as a 1% partner, Russian partner in my business. He said, I don't ever want to have anything to do with your business, but, I'll be a friend and we'll hang out together. And probably about a month after we got there, he called me and said, I need a favor. I got some friends and they're looking for some things. They're looking for some slot machines for their casino, and they're looking for some credit card machines for some grocery stores they own. And can you help them out? And I said, yeah, Visa's one of my clients in Moscow, and, I got Steve Wynn, assistant in Las Vegas, was Ukrainian, and I'm sure he could find him slot machines. And so I put the deal together, and the guys got on a plane and flew to Las Vegas, and they bought 3,000 slot machines for all their casinos, and they set it up with Moscow and got Visa machines in all their businesses. I never met them. Yuri handled everything, put it all together for me. But as it turned out later, they turned out to be my lifesaver. You know, this entity, Russia was really interesting. There's a lot of stories out there about how the mafia in Russia is really powerful. Well, you got to think about it. Back when the government ran everything, including everything you buy and everything you do, and they did a terrible job at it. There were a lot of people that came along and did a better job. They brought in jeans and they brought in cars and they brought in things, and they called them mafia, but they were really just a competition against the government because there was no other business. I mean, we can call American business mafia too. So they got into business and they got really good at it, and they kind of broke out into. I eventually broke it down into 4 different groups, large groups, in terms of the people that were running everything. First of all, you had the KGB. The KGB were just who they were. They were they could make your life miserable really fast. They had a lot of power, a lot of influence, and, it's hard for me to know how deep to go with things, but I'm going to be as honest as I can with you in terms of how it ran. But the KGB basically ran all the drugs and all the guns and all all that kind of stuff, prostitution. They weren't the good guys. They basically were involved in in sponsoring and supporting all that. And everybody else that was in Russia knew that you didn't get into those businesses unless you wanted to have a problem with the KGB. And there was another group, and that was basically the old Communist Party. It was run by a guy by the name of Moskva, and he was just just a thug. He was kind of a big old communist, power broker, and got whatever he wanted through force, and he used all his communist connections and all his stuff, and he ran a big part of it. And then there was a guy by the name of Igor, and Igor was like a Olympic heavyweight Greco-Roman wrestler who won a gold medal and was a very famous guy. And he basically put together, 3,000 kickboxing, karate, chopping guys, and used them as a protection force. And they would, take care of businesses and support them and make sure they didn't have any trouble with the other mafia groups. And, and then there were the Chechens. And the Chechens were, as I found out later, the most powerful organization in Moscow, because they not only had, in Kiev, because they not only had Kiev, they had Moscow, they had pretty much the rest of the world. And where you went, they were the ones that were running things. And these four groups had a pact that I found out about later, which was kind of interesting. And the pact was basically, the moment you got any business, foreign-owned business, to give you $1, they were yours, and everybody else left them alone. And so you could go in, and they all had different ways of doing it. The KGB had signed a beautiful contract saying they're going to protect you, they're going to take care of you. And they would say, okay, this is only going to cost your company a couple $1,000s a month. We'll make sure all our security teams are in place. And, and then they would run out and they would call the chief of the fire department and they would say, go give the guy some trouble, And the fire department would show up and say, oh, you got a big problem here. We're going to have to do something. And they would call the KGB and say, hey, you're protecting me. Why don't you come down and take care of the fire department? And they, oh, okay, that's fine. But now it's going to be $2,500 or $3,000 a month. The price gone up because, this was getting hard to work. And then they would call someone else and tax authorities and have them go give the company trouble. And then the guy would call the KGB and say, hey, you got to help us. Okay, well, now it's $5,000, And it was a con game. And they just worked it that way, Moscow was different. He basically took a percentage of everything you made. The bigger you got, the bigger he got. He was just one of those hard to deal with guys. It was really tough. I had a really interesting early run-in with him. I used to see him, I'd go into the casinos and stuff, and he'd be sitting in a bar or something. And all of a sudden, some thugs would come in, and they'd clean the place out, and they'd say, okay, something's happening, and you'd go sit down, and in he'd come. They'd set the pool table up so he could just rack them and break one, and they'd have a drink poured for him, and he'd have a couple girls on his arms, and he would take a drink and bust the balls, and then they'd all leave laughing, and everybody just sit around and wonder, who was that? What was that about? And I was sitting in a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and all of a sudden they said, is there any new business in the audience tonight? And these two guys sitting right behind me stood up and said, yeah, we're going to be opening a sports bar. And I turned around, I was like, what? A sports bar? How did I not hear about this? Where are you guys from? What's going on? Oh, we're with this international company. We build sports bars all over the world. We just built a sports bar here. And I was like, oh, cool. So after the meeting, I got them aside and I'm like, where's your sports bar? And they said, in this hotel. I knew this is Mospeth's headquarters, and I was like, wow, really? And your partner is Mospeth then, I guess. And they said, yeah, oh yeah, he's our partner. He got everything done. He got us in there really fast and took care of everything. And I said, wow, good for you. And they said, yeah, but we're having some problems, construction's behind and we're having issues with getting ready and we got an opening coming. And I said, well, I got a construction crew, pretty big one, a lot of guys, work hard. I said, why don't you let me give you a hand with it? So I went in and I basically took my crew in and we finished the thing really fast. A couple of weeks we had it all done. And they gave me a VIP pass and said, you'll never pay for a drink or anything in this bar ever, and we really appreciate what you did for us. And we became pretty close, and I loved going in there. It was one of the few places in Russia I could watch sports, and it was a lot of fun. And then one night I was sitting in my apartment, and I got a knock on the door, and here they are, the two of them, and they came in. They were scared. I could tell something had happened. They said, look, we just, Moscow just walked into the bar and had a couple of bullies with some guns, and they basically told us to get on an airplane and go home because they were taking the bar from us. And, well, what do we do? And I said, well, I know him. If, you get on an airplane and go. How are you doing? And they were like, well, we got our money back. We got invested in it. And I said, well, then you should get out of here and be happy that you got your money back and you're out alive, because he's not a guy you're going to want to challenge or take on. So they left, and he took over the bar. Of course, I lost my VIP status, so I wasn't happy about that, and it just became a seedy, kind of a dirty place. Nobody wanted to go in there anymore, and he just kind of ruined it, And so I had kind of started thinking about like, who do I need to take care of myself? And I went and met with Igor because a friend of mine was working for him as a translator. And Igor was a nice guy with his karate, kickboxing, champion guys, but it was kind of overkill. Every time you saw a company that was using him as their protection to keep them safe and stuff, you could tell because it was just cars and big neck guys standing around him, and it just didn't feel comfortable. And so I didn't go with that. And I finally just decided, I've been here a long time. I think I'm pretty good. I'm just not going to bother with having any kind of protection here, And I thought I was a pretty tough guy. And then when I decided, okay, it's time to do something big. I'd been doing a lot of construction real estate. I was going to build a bar. And I got with Sergey, and Sergey was the guy who had the old pool bar. And he said to me, hey, I got this pool bar. It's really cool. And I just signed a contract to get the whole building next door to me, and it used to be an old show theater, and it'd be really neat for that cowboy bar you talked about building here a long time ago. And I'd really like to partner with you, be silent partner, give you 75% ownership, I'll take 25, and I'll help you get everything done. My uncle's in the parliament, and he's got the KGB as his backing, so he's safe and protected, and it's his roof, they call it. In Russia, they call it the Krisha, which Krisha means roof. I wrote a book called Come Under My Roof, And he said, I got them as a Krisha, and so you don't have to worry about anything and all of that. So we went ahead and we went to work, We started building the bar. And it took me almost a year and a half, and I spent almost $250,000 building out that bar because it was in a 5-story building. And we had to reinforce the walls. We had to reinforce the whole place. We busted out the show theater. We jackhammered down until we got down to where the floor was all level. And we had to punch a hole into his bar and make the bridge that would go over to the Rio Grande. And it was a cowboy bar. You'd walk in and swing through the doors and walk into the Wells Fargo Bank and this Liberty stable and the hotel. And bartenders were all up on planks and mirrors, so it looked like it was two sides of the town. You walk over the bridge into Mexico. It was really beautiful and powerful. I spent a long time building it. And I walked in, I'd just about done. I was getting to where I was getting towards the end of it. And I walked back into Sergey's bar in the back door. And I didn't think anybody heard me come in. And I looked into the door and I saw Sergey sitting there with Moskva. And they were talking, and it hit me. I thought, Krisha is not the KGB. His Krisha, his protection is Moscow. And they're going to take my bar from me, just like they did my buddies. I backed myself out and walked away. I got on the phone. I called Yuri and I said, Yuri, guess what's going on? And I told him, and he said, oh, man, I had a feeling about that. I knew it. I was afraid of that. God, that's a bummer. I guess you're going to have to call your friends. And I was like, what are you talking about? What friends? And he said, you idiot. How do you think you've lived here for 3 years now, never had any problems in your life and never had any issues? He said, do you know who those guys were that you did the slot machine deal for and the credit card deal when you first got here? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? He said, that was the Chechens, man. He said, they put a Krisha on you and nobody's going to touch you because of what you did for them. And so maybe it's time you actually sat down and had a talk with them and let them know what was going on. I thought, oh my God, I had no idea. I thought it was just because I was such a tough cowboy. Everybody was afraid of me. As it turned out, I had a big pit bull on the porch behind me. It kind of kept everybody from bothering me. So I asked Yuri to set it up. So he set up a meeting with me. And, they showed up at my apartment and picked me up. And it was a little bit spooky. It was like a scene out of some kind of spy movie or something. They got me in an elevator and took me down. There were a bunch of guys. They put me in a car. They drove around. Lights were flashing and things were happening, And the guy in the car with me was an interesting character. He couldn't speak very good English. He was pretty much Russian, a couple words of English, and I spoke a little Russian. So we talked a little bit. Kind of a nice guy, but a little tough, and I was a little bit nervous of him and stuff. And we pull over at an apartment building, and a young gal gets in, and she's the translator. And so she just starts translating. They're going to take you. They want you to meet. This is Angel, and they want you to meet his brother and his family. And so we drove around for a bit, and it started raining, and then we pulled in a parking lot, and there's a big old Mercedes sitting there, And there was also a little black Mercedes with black windows that I'd seen all over for the last 3 years. The kids' school, by my house, and it hit me. I realized that was them just keeping an eye on me, keeping an eye on my kids, keeping an eye on everybody. So I got out and I got in the car with the oldest brother, who was considered to be the patriarch of the family. And he told everybody else to get out, and him and I and the translator sat in there, and he said, I need to tell you something, man. I have so much respect for you. You got to be the craziest person on this planet. Because you come to my country, you bring your wife, your 2 kids, your 2 cats, you land here with all your luggage, and somehow you manage to survive, and you're thriving in your business. He said, you should be doing so much better, but you've done really well for yourself considering, that you've never reached out to ask for help or protection or anything like that. You just went ahead and did your business, and you've done a really good job. He went on to tell me what my business was, how many apartments I had, what the latest one I got was, what the name of my secretary was. He knew everything about me. And he said, he told me the story of how the groups all have this deal, and he said, you helped us out early, and so I just put a stamp on you that nobody messed with you, and they didn't, and but we have our meetings, we all get together every once in a while, and we talk, and you're known as this. I'm like, this? What is this? And he said, that means you're nuts and you belong in an insane asylum. He said, we all just think you're crazy, but you're here. You're doing children at Chernobyl, and you're doing junior achievement in their schools for our kids, and you're doing all this stuff to help us as a country, and none of it makes sense, but, I really appreciate who you are and what you've done, and how can I help you? And I said, well, I got this deal, and he said right away, Moskva, you got a problem. You got a big problem, he said, but I'm working on it, and we'll take care of it. He said, but it's time we put this deal together. I said, well, what's it going to cost me? I'm thinking, how much is he going to charge me? What's a month? How is it going to be? He said, look, that's not the way this works. He said, we're the East and you're the West. And this is where the East meets the West, and they do business together. And we're both going to make a lot of money. We're both going to do really well. And I'm going to take care of you, and you're going to take care of me. And that's how business works. And I was just like, wow. But he said, first thing I want you to do, he said, I'd taken Kathy and the kids back by then. He said, I want you to go back, and I want you to talk to your wife and your kids and see if this is something you really want to do. Because this is a long-term commitment. We're going to be in business together for a long time. And I want to make sure you're ready for that. I said, okay. So I said my goodbyes, and and we laughed a bit about a few things. And I got on a plane. I went back to California, and I told Kathy what had happened. I said, Moscow's going to take my bar from me. You know how much time I've spent, how much work I've putting into it, and I'm going to lose it. And I had this opportunity with Yuri, and this guy that's been helping me out all along, and I said, what do you think? She said, well, I ain't going to live with you if you lose that bar. She said, you come home and he takes that bar from you, you're going to be a son of a bitch to live with, and I don't want to do that. You go figure this out. I said, okay. So I flew back, and I met with him, and I said, let's do it. And I signed a little agreement, just a simple form that just we agreed that we're going to take care of each other and 50-50 partners on things. And, all of a sudden, every door I had that might have been closed opened up. My bar got done right away. Got really ready and done right away. Everything really happened. He told me right away, don't say anything to Sergey or to anybody about us or what's going on. But, I had some issues with the IRS with some of my employees, the Russian IRS, and they went away, and I had the fire department and the building codes, that all went away. Everything just got better. I got all these beautiful buildings that I got to rent to clients that were looking for stuff. My business just went crazy good, easy, smooth, effortless. And Angel, the guy who was in the car with me, was the younger brother, and he was like my guy. He took me everywhere, did everything, and made sure everything happened. It was so funny because for times before that, whenever I'd walk in clubs and stuff, and I'd see the mafioso kind of guys, they'd all be like tough guys. Man, when I walk in with Angel, everybody'd be like sitting with their head down and nodding and being really quiet and calm and nice to me, and things just changed big, And I guess, sometimes you don't see the forest through the trees, and I really kind of, got used to the lifestyle of feeling like finally I paid my dues in that country, and finally I was going to be able to do business, and finally things were going to go the way I wanted to. So, I had little things that kind of should have tipped me off that I was getting a little deeper than I probably needed to. I'm driving down the street one day and I saw a big, beautiful Jeep, CJ6 Jeep, and I said, that's the car for Russia. The next day, Angel shows up and hands me the keys. It's parked in my driveway. He goes, it's yours. We got it for you. And I was like, wow, okay. I got to be careful what I say and what I ask for and what I mention maybe needs to be done or anything like that. So I got real kind of just quiet about it all and just, humble about having the power and the energy to feel like I could get things done. I helped a lot of my friends who got in some jams and some problems. I just calling them and saying I need help, and they took care of it, and it felt good to kind of have that sense that I was taken care of, and I really felt that way. I'll tell you something. When I met the oldest brother, I felt like he was my soul brother for thousands of years. I'd have done business with him anytime, anywhere on the planet because I just loved the guy. I loved his heart. I loved his energy. I loved the way he talked to me. I loved who he was. I mean, he just felt like a genuine, honest, authentic, amazing person, So I have to say that about the energy of what was there because there was a lot of not that, a lot of stuff that just didn't feel good. Just kind of like it in America, a lot of the politics don't feel good. A lot of stuff don't feel good. You meet somebody that you really like and you're just like, I love this guy, and whoever it is, So we got ready to open the bar, and finally Angel came to me and said, it's time. We got to tell your partner that we're here. And so I told my partner, no, he almost fell out of his chair. He's like, what are you talking about? Your roof, your Krishas, the Chechens, that can't be. That's not possible. Oh, my God, this is terrible. And, I said, what's wrong? And he goes, nothing, but I got to go, So he left. So Angel came into the bar and picked me up and said, come on, we're going for a ride. So I went with him, and we pulled up in front of Moscow's headquarters. And, there's armed guards everywhere, guys holding Uzis. And, I'm just like, wow, this is intense. But it's just Angel and I. And Angel ain't carrying any guns, I can tell that. We walk in the front door and sit down. They're all at a conference table. Angel sits down, and he just lets it loose. Man, I mean, I can tell he's laying them on all of them, the third degree, man. And he goes, come on, let's get out of here, in English. And we get up, we walk out, get in the car. He pulls over to the translator. She gets in. I said, what did he tell him? He said, he told them, you're going to go in this bar. It's going to be a classy joint. You tell your thugs to dress nice. Wear suits. I don't want any trouble from any of you guys. You guys stay out of the picture. We're running the show here. You guys you got your percentage. You're with your guy, but we're with him, and nobody messes with him, and nobody messes with the bar, and we don't want any of your bullshit in there. It's going to be a good joint. It's going to do really good business. So sit down and shut up. From what I understand, Moscow didn't take that very well. He got a little pissed off. It kind of ignited a war, between the two of them. A big war. But they weren't ever, like they had never, ever had an issue, So I'm getting to the end of this story because I think we're going to end it with a big bang when I tell you the finale of how this thing all ended, because it got pretty intense and it got pretty wild, and it really kind of taught me a little bit more about respecting the wild East. We had tamed the West. There weren't any gunslingers and Indians running around here scalping people, but I tell you what, Russia had a lot of that kind of energy going on, and I walked right into the middle of it, and it was a wild ride. And we'll finish this in the next story. I'm really happy you're here. Thanks for supporting me on Patreon, and you all have a great day. Have a great week. Have a great life. Namaste. Thank you for being here.